Basically, this is what you can do with the power of Archicad with the control of story settings. So let's learn, practice, and share. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Math Tutorials. Today, we're gonna talk about story settings and a helpful tool named Trace. This is a project that we did for the University of Politecnico di Milano, and we designed a social housing in Barcelona. If you're familiar with the area, you know where the project is. The project was about a social housing that also is a good place for people to communicate and have activities. So we had to consider a platform, first, a good connection to the street, and some public areas that here on this level we had these public areas, maybe some shops, connection to different levels, and here we had water. So we want the project to have a good connection with the water also. And then we had to work on the privacy of these residentials. And also they asked for a common area just for the residents. So we had to work in different layers, which the first layer is public. And the second layer is semi-public, which is just for the residents, and the private areas on each level and for each house. And at the end, for making an icon for the project, we designed this tower, and which also this one has different layers and floors based on the public, semi-public, and private. To design such a project with different layers and different function, we had to control very well the levels and height of each level. So I believe this couldn't be possible with the power of Archicad and ability to work on the layers on top of each other. To start with a project like this, I'm gonna explain it as simple as possible. When you open the Archicad, you're gonna have a space like this, and the first thing that you should do is set the working unit from options, project preferences, and working units. Here I work with meter with 2 decimals. So all these items are set to meter, and I'm gonna click on OK. The next thing is setting up the project 0. Here we have navigator. You have all the stories, sections, elevations, and all the layouts of your projects here, even the details and 3D views. We're gonna start with the stories and set up the heights for the stories. Here on the properties, when you click on a story or a floor, here on the properties, we have a setting here. By clicking on that, the story setting window opens. We can set the floors with the names and the elevation and the height of each floor. Here I'm gonna say this is the ground floor, which the elevation is 0. So my project 0 is on the 0. And the height of this ground floor, I'm gonna set it to 2.8, which is suitable for car parkings. Then for the first floor, here I'm gonna name it to common areas, which the elevation start with 2.8. The first floor start from 2.80 m of the project 0. Here I'm gonna set this one to 4, so it's like 4 meter, and floors gonna be 6.80, 6 meter and 80 centimeter. So here I'm gonna say first floor. Then I usually set up the height of each residential, for example, residential floor to 3 meter and 20. because of the height of the stairs and the number of stairs on each run in the staircase. And then here, if I want to add another floor on top of first floor, I should select this and click on Insert Above. So here I can name it to second floor, which the height is 3 meter 20 centimeter by default, because this floor that I select and insert a floor above this has the height of 3 meter 20. So if I select this one with the height of 4 meter to next level and I click on insert above, the next floor gonna have the height of the selected floor. To delete this story, because I don't need it, I can just delete this story. And for example, here we want to have an underground. I'm gonna select the ground floor and click on insert below. Also here, we see that the height is the same as this selected floor. I'm going to click on the OK. Now we are on underground floor. So I'm going to rename it. Also here, I can right click, rename story, and the name would be underground. Okay. So the name changed here. And then also by right click on these floors, I have some options here, which for now, we just talking about story settings and we skip the other options for later. Also here, we can create new stories. And on this window, we can say we want to have the story above or below the current floor that we selected. So we can name the floor, we can set the height, and then we can create it. To understand better, I'm gonna draw some walls. Since we just talk about walls, I just gonna use walls here. With a simple wall, with a generic one, and with the generic structure, which the wall height is set up automatically. The bottom of the wall is at the 0, and the top of the wall is linked to the ground floor. We are on the underground level right now. I'm gonna draw some walls here. Let's zoom in. I want to create a square like that, okay, but this wall, as you see, is drawn with the reference line, and I want the wall to be on the right side of the reference line. So here I can click on this button. Automatically, the wall will flip on the other side of the reference line. I'm gonna put in 6 meter, and then from here, like 10 meter, and with one click, I'm coming down. We can use this guideline. We can keep the shift key down and drag the mouse here. When the cursor changes to the black, I can click. So this wall is now at the same length of this wall. And then I'm gonna connect these 2 points. Here we are on the underground. Then with double click on the ground floor, I will go one floor up. But how can I see where did I draw the wall underground? Here, the useful tool of trace will come to help us. With clicking on this button or Alt F2, by clicking on this, I can see a shadow of the lower level walls on above floor. So I can draw it. I can draw the walls based on this shadow here. Also, I cannot select this or change this. So the thing that we see here is actually it's just a picture, a shadow of what we have underground. So to speed up, I'm going to select the chained wall and with one click, 2 clicks, 3, 4, and 5, I'm going to have the same square. To make this level a little bit different from the lower floor, I'm gonna make this wall a little bit different here. So these walls are selected all together, which now is grouped together. So with Control Shift G, I'm gonna ungroup them so I can select individually and edit them one by one. With this black circle here, I can drag the wall and bring it back to wherever I want. So let's say 7.5 meters. Then I'm going to select this with Control D. I'm going to drag this wall from here to here. And by keeping the control down, as you see, we having a scissor right next to the cursor. We can cut like that. So this is the underground, and this is the ground floor. We go to the next floor, which I named it common area, and still we see the underground floor, which is this, and the ground floor is a little bit smaller. So on this floor, I want to see the ground floor. So I right click on it, and here show as trace reference. By clicking on this, I can see the ground floor here. I can draw the walls here like that. Here I'm gonna put in 6 meters, and then this is it. Also, we can do the same thing for above floor. I mean, when we are on the ground floor, and if you want to see the upper floor, we should just right click on the desired floor and choose the show as trace reference. Now we see the upper floor here. For example, if you want to add something here, we can do it like that. And the good point is, as you see the cursor here, the pencil, when we are on the right line, we will see a line here on the pencil. See the difference? Yeah. And it snaps to the wall on the trace reference. So I'm gonna finish this one here with Control key. I'm gonna delete this part. And now this wall is gonna like that with the help of trace reference. Also here on the trace button, when we click on this, we can choose a specific floor trace for all the floors that we see. So for example here, when we select the ground floor as a reference, on all the floors, we're going to see the trace of the ground floor. Also here and here. So only on the ground floor we can select and edit. But what if we just want to have the trace of the lower level always? So when I'm on the ground floor and I want to see the underground, I can click here and then show as trace reference. But when I go up, I'm going to see the underground again, but I want to, when I select a floor, I see there a trace of the lower level. So here on the menu of trace, we can select below current story. So when we select a story, the trace will show us below level, the below story. Or we can select the previous story. As we go through different levels, here I'm on the common areas, then I go to the ground floor, I will see the previous floor that I clicked. Then I go to the underground and I see the ground floor that I clicked before. And then I go to the common areas and I see underground as a previous floor. So also here we can drag the reference, we can rotate it, and we can make some edits on it. But remember that we cannot edit the trace lines. I usually use the reference as below current story. So when I design each floor and I go up, I will see the lower story and where do I have the walls, where can I build in general. The next option is active reference. So here we have a trace of this floor that we don't remember which floor it was. So we're going to click on the active reference and automatically it's going to show us the reference floor without clicking it here. Back to the other option, here we can drag the reference. So for example, by clicking on this, I can say I want to drag the reference, for example, 8 meter and this way. So here the reference is the place that we draw it. But here on the reference, we see this wall moved to another place. Also, we can rotate the reference. So by clicking on that, I can click on the pivot point, and then by clicking on another point, I can rotate it as much as I want. So for example, here I'm gonna rotate this reference 45 degrees. Now here we see it like that, but as it is the shadow of the underground, when I click on this, the wall is gonna stay at the same place that we draw it. So these changes is only for the trace shadows. To reset the trace on the original place, we should just come here and reset to default position. So it's gonna turn back to the position that it actually is. The other option that, for example, we are designing the ground floor and underground at the same time, and we want to see the ground floor when we are working on the underground, and then we want to see the underground trace when we are working on the ground floor. So between these two, we can just select the switch reference with active. Now we have activated the trace, and the activated plan turns to trace. The last option that I want to say is a trace and reference. So here we have some options to do. But before this, I want to mention that here we have 4 other options. I'm not gonna explain it right now because I usually don't use these. These are not very helpful. You can try it, and whenever you have the problem, you can just rebuild the reference or um, turn off the trace. These are not very useful for me at least. So I'm gonna move on to trace and reference here. On this window, we can turn off and on the trace. We can say that we want to see always the below current story, which I'm gonna do it like that so we would understand better. Then we can drag, rotate, or reset to the default position. And also, this is the rebuild reference. So if we did something on the reference floor and we cannot see it when we use that floor as a trace, we can rebuild the reference floor to see those changes. Also, these 4 items here is the same as these 4. But the things that I want to mention here is how do we see the reference? Here we have the uniform color. We can set it to original color that we have for the walls, windows, and the furnitures. But also we can select a specified color here. So now the wall becomes green. And I can set the intensity of the trace here. Sometimes we don't want it to be very strong, so we can understand better the part that we are designing. Also, to see better the reference, even if we set the intensity to the highest level, we can set the intensity of the active level to a lower amount. And also we can set a specific color for the active plants. I usually use the reference as a gray, a solid gray, which it reminds me that it is not activate and is just a shadow. And for the active floor, I'm gonna use the original color to understand the differences much better. And of course, when we don't want to see the trace, we can just click on the trace and the trace will be turned off. This is everything that you can use for the trace, which is a really helpful tool to design in architecture. Back to this project, imagine that you are working on a big project on this scale and you have so many floors, ground floors, underground, and so many things here. So the trace is going to be very helpful here. And believe me, Doing some projects like this is impossible without a trace option here. For example, on the first floor, I would like to see the platform here. I just right click and show as trace reference. Now we will see all the lines, all the architectural elements that we draw here as a trace. Back to our simple project, which actually is not a project, it's just a sample. So here I explained the story settings, and to really understand this better, let's see the project that we draw here on 3D. So this is the underground floor, this is the ground floor, and this is the first floor. Also, when we select the arrow tool and we hover on one element, it shows us info of that element, which in this case is this element is wall. The structure is generic structure, base elevations. The thickness of the wall, the height is linked to the ground floor, which layer this item is available, and the story that this item has drawn. Also here we can see these lines here, which is the axis of the X, Y, and Z. This point here on our plan is this X point here, which is the 0, 0, 0 of our project. Another view that I want to talk about is the section view. Here from the viewpoints, I'm gonna draw a section here, which definitely I'm gonna explain it in further videos. So if you subscribe to my channel, you will definitely see how to work with the section line and other elements. But for this video, I'm just gonna move on and double click on the section view. Here we will see the settings that we had on the floor settings. These are the walls that we draw, and these are the heights of each floor that we select. Also, here on the ground floor, if I right click on the story setting, I can have this story setting window again. And if I change the height of the ground floor to another amount and I hit OK, it's gonna change the section automatically. So you don't need to worry about if you change something in the middle of your project, you should redo all the project again. This is another powerful point of Archicad that I really love to work with. So back to the more complex project. If I draw a section line here, I'm gonna do it like that, a very fast thing. And I go to the section to see this section here. You can see all the story settings that I have for my project here. And if I right click on any floor and click on the story settings, here I can see all the height of each floor, and I can change it as I wish. And this is all you should know about the trace and story settings here. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about the next design element, which is the columns, and how we can see and draw them in the projects, and how we can see it on each floor without needing it to redraw the columns on each level. So if you are on board to know more about Archicad, this powerful program, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, if you have any question, please let me know in the comment section, and I would answer to all of your questions. Also, if you know something more about the items that I explained in this video, share it with me and other followers. Thank you so much, and see you on the next video.